I'm focused on his spirit cause it keeps me from his fire. The Holy Ghost was with me, so my fear I leave behind. My sins were all diminished when he took that breath and died. And if you think I'ma give up on my God, the devil is a lie. The devil is a lie. The devil is a lie.
Hello. Welcome to Black Tea News. I'm your host, Christina Barr, and today we're going to be talking about Tucker Carlson and some wild takes that he had, talking to Megyn Kelly and just other interviews that he had that I didn't have enough time to really dig down and talk about because I was out of town. And I going to Israel and talking to some of the people on the ground and seeing how much they do value life, not only like the lives of other Israelis, but also how much they value the lives of their enemies and how much, if they resent anything, they resent the fact that Hamas hides behind civilians, which, Hamas knows that they don't want to kill civilians. That's why they hide behind civilians. And you have people like Dave Smith and Tucker Carlson who believe that they're killing people on purpose and things like that. But I found some commentary that he had on the Bible and the New Testament and how America got its values from the New Testament as opposed to just the Bible in general was very interesting and I thought very telling. Also, he's had like crazy things that he's written down in his newsletters, which people have began to analyze, where he, runs cover for Zoran Mamdani and other things like that. So I think that Tucker Carlson, unfortunately, is not on our side. Like Ben Shapiro was brave enough to go ahead and say that when he was being interviewed by Megyn Kelly and really pressing her. I thought her performance was really embarrassing when she was interviewing Ben and was basically running cover for Tucker. And I just got a lot of thoughts about Tucker, and I used to DVR his show. You guys, if you've been following me for a while, you know that I used to really love Tucker's show, and I would DVR it. So unfortunately, it's just not, he's just not kind of what he used to be. But before we jump into the clips and start the commentary and everything, I want to encourage you guys to blackteens.com. Check out different content on my website, articles, videos, etc. If you like what I do, please consider leaving a donation on the website because it does cost a stream and my site, all that good stuff. So you guys can support it. I very much appreciate it and appreciate you guys. You guys can also check out different merch that's available on the website. That stuff does also, support. When you get different t-shirts and mugs and so on. So go ahead and check out the stuff on the site. You guys can also check out some of my books that I've written. I have young adult books. This is my historical fiction fantasy. It's a thing that I quickly recommend to people. I've got Slavery Free, How to Overcome a Spirit of Fear. That's a faith book that is nonfiction, and God is blatantly against abortion. And of course, I got my book Bigger. I got one behind me, but that's my paperback behind me. This is my hardcover, which if you want to sign one, I don't have a lot in stock right now. So if you want to go to my website, there's a link in the description. It'll take you to my book website where you guys can get it. And you guys can get it's in hardcover. I also have them in paperback. I see people are also, buying them from Amazon. I wonder if some of you guys are going to Amazon to get it, or if some people are just kind of finding it. So that's neat. If people are just like, oh, dinosaur, cute picture book, that's exciting. So it's available. So you guys can pick it up wherever you need to pick it up. So and even if I do run out of hardcovers, there's still obviously ways to get it. You guys can order hardcovers basically from everywhere, as long as you do it online, like Barnes and Noble, Books A Million, Amazon, of course. You guys can get it directly from Ingham Spark. And I'll probably have to put a link directly to Ingham Spark on my site when I do probably run out of stock. So holiday seasons, make sure you guys are, picking up books for your kiddos. Anyway, we're right up on Thanksgiving. It's been a really busy past 3 weeks for me. So I will be filming tomorrow. Still plan to do a live stream tomorrow on I'm gonna Thursday this Thanksgiving. I think everyone's gonna be eating turkey and spending time with their families and so on. So I'm not gonna be streaming on Thursday and probably not Friday either. And enjoy your Black Friday and your Cyber Monday. I'll be there on Monday though. So there's that. Uh at least I plan to be. I'll let you guys know if there's any delays or any cancellations on my part, but tomorrow we'll stream and then we'll enjoy our holidays. I'm just curious though, and maybe this is just such a blessing to me because I see people put memes. I saw one the other day of like, I'm not going to talk about politics. I'm just going to bring the charcuterie board, and it was an image of Donald Trump, and like the hair was made out of cheese, and then his face was made out of meats and so on. And it was a funny little joke. And I keep seeing like different TikToks of people like gearing up, like going into Thanksgiving, planning on talking about politics, so like and arguing, debating with their family, and that is just not something that I have to worry about. Now we're gonna have like I guess a smaller Thanksgiving than we normally do. I mean, we don't usually go places for Thanksgiving. It's just usually we go over to my parents' house and my mom would cook, but she passed away last September, so we had to do Thanksgiving or, you know, take over in that role because my mom would mostly do everything. And so, that was a really rough holiday. That was probably the roughest because it was like so fresh. And we were just eating and crying. Christmas was tough too, but Christmas was very emotional and memorable and thoughtful from different things that we got from our siblings and so on. And but Thanksgiving was rough, so I guess it'll be better this time around. But everyone in my immediate family is basically on the same page as far as politics. We debate like here or there with some little things, like maybe I'll be upset at something that Trump does and my dad is just like a Trump apologist or something, and maybe that's like um the gist of the debate or something. Or sometimes me and my eldest sister don't see exactly eye to eye on a subject, but mostly we all agree. So we just don't have that kind of division when we come together for holidays. Now I have some like aunts and uncles who are Democrats, and one particular uncle who really likes to argue that stuff. I don't like to argue that stuff with them because um they get a little too sensitive about it, and a lot of older people and older generations just feel like if you're younger then you gotta watch your mouth. And like, I'm not disrespectful or anything like that, but I don't know, people just seem to have a different attitude about people who are younger saying stuff. So I would rather not engage if the conversation's not going to go anywhere. It's just going to be an argument. So I try to kind of avoid those conversations with some of those relatives anyway. So I'm grateful. I guess that's what people like to say, what they're grateful for Thanksgiving. I'm grateful that I don't have that kind of drama. So I pray that for you guys that you will not have Thanksgiving drama, and one day that can be your aim, I suppose. Anyway, let's chit chat about what we're here for today, Tucker. Um, I've been disturbed for a minute with some of his content, and I remember when and this was I guess about 2 years ago that he said that Ben Shapiro must hate his country or doesn't love his country or something like that because he was focusing on another country while people were dying of fentanyl. And I thought that was a wild thing to say, especially because Tucker went to Russia and was sniffing the bread and did that soft interview with Putin, and you saw how nice it is over there, in this one city that he went to, never mind the rest of the country and so on. But um so there was this attack on Ben that I didn't appreciate, that was really unfair. And I thought that was really interesting considering that um Tucker Carlson was excusing or sticking up for a communist dictator because he's socially conservative. And Ben is just like, he's a communist, and people sending fentanyl to the United States of America. Like, who cares if he doesn't like LGBT stuff? And Tucker's like, I care. What do you mean? I'm like, oh, so now you don't hate your country if you're caring about something that goes on overseas and ignoring the fentanyl problem. So there's just so many inconsistencies that I could really name going on with Tucker. I really wanted to focus on this biblical portion um that he mentioned. Before that, let me Christine said, by the way, Christine, do people call you Christina sometimes? Because sometimes people call me Christine. I'm like, there's clearly an A at the end of my name, but people Thanksgiving should be off limits for political conversations, no drama. I'm very thankful for my living family. So I agree. I mean, sometimes it could be fun to debate, but again, some people are so sensitive about it, and I would just rather not have that kind of drama, on those kinds of days. So I'm I'm just gonna be hanging out with my immediate family again, and we don't have that kind of drama. So I'm thankful for that. Um, but anyway, Tucker Carlson had his long conversation with Megyn Kelly, and one of the things he talked about was how our the United States is different and Christianity is different. Well, Western civilization is different because based on the New Testament rather than, I guess, the Old Testament, which I thought was interesting and not true. And I think Tucker knows enough about history to know that that's not true. And I have a suspicion why they're going that route, I suppose. And I think it becomes evident in this particular video. So if you haven't seen it, I guess you're about to see it now. And if you have seen it, well, I guess now you get to see it with my commentary and see what I got to say. So this was his interview with Megyn Kelly.
Is totally illegitimate and very specifically unchristian to attack people for their DNA. Like, I hate this group.
You wanted him to.
That.
So they're talking about Nick Fuentes, and Ben did criticize Tucker. Well, a lot of people have been criticizing Tucker for his interview with Nick Fuentes because he didn't bring up a lot of heinous things that Nick had said in the past, and which is pretty, messed up. But Tucker, he will have a lot of people on his show that he's basically just platforming, that he has no like journalistic integrity or curiosity, won't really push back, and people mention like, well, you're really hard on Ted Cruz, and people say like, oh, well, that he's a senator versus like some college, some young kid. Nick is an adult. He's been doing this stuff for a while. He has a pretty decent sized following, obviously. And Tucker got famous for just inviting people onto Fox News live television, and just humiliating them, these left-wing nobodies. And he would ask them pressing questions, and he would do his like puzzled Tucker face and just humiliate them. So I don't buy that, oh, that's just not Tucker's thing. That's not his style. That is what made Tucker Carlson. That's what made Tucker Carlson. So there's been a lot of people that he's had on his podcast that basically he's signed on. Seems like he's just kind of signed on to a lot of radical ideas and commentary, or just will a lot of times let them talk, and he'll interject and kind of add on to it here or there, but he doesn't debunk, he doesn't ask clarifying questions really, and or things that would really press them or debunk stuff that he should know isn't true. And I've given examples that are like non-foreign policy related before, like when he had on the guy who claimed to slept with Obama. He didn't ask any questions. He didn't really question the story. He tried to make it seem like, well, it may not be true, but it's a legitimate thing that we need to listen, and it's credible. He took a lie detector test, but didn't tell everyone that he failed the lie detector test. So there's some tactics that Tucker uses that I don't feel are very honest nowadays. But him saying like, oh, it's important for Nick to hear that it's wrong to judge people by their ethnicity and so on, and act as if it was his goal to kind of steer him off of this like evil cliff. I don't buy that when Tucker also said that he thinks Christian Zionists are like the worst people he knows, and I'll play that clip too. So I think he's playing a game with a lot of people, but this particular segment of this interview, again, is interesting.
Is the basis of Western civilization. Western civilization is derived from the New Testament. It is based on Christian ethics, and the core difference in the West and the rest of the world, but every country is believe in collective punishment, don't believe in blood guilt, don't believe that you're born guilty, and we also don't believe that you're born virtuous. We believe that God created every person as an individual. God did not create communities. Every woman gives birth to a human being, and every person has the spark of God inside him. I mean, that's what we believe as Christians. And every person has the possibility of redemption. And in my religion, the great human hero in Christianity, Jesus is God in human form. But the great human hero in the New Testament is its primary author, Paul, who was Saul of Tarsus, who was the primary persecutor as a Pharisee of Christians. He was murdering Christians. He was Jewish, by the way, so like everyone in the New Testament, but he was on the way to go murder more Christians, that he met Jesus, and then he became the great evangelist of our faith and wrote the majority of the New Testament. So like, he's my personal hero, but he's also living testament to the truth about people, which is each one of us was born as an individual, and we will face God alone at the end to account for our lives. And along the way, there is always the possibility that no matter what your genes are, what you look like, or what your religion is, that you can change.
So he keeps saying like, oh, this is what we've learned in the New Testament, that Western civilization is based on the New Testament, and because they don't do blood guilt, and everyone's accountable for their own sins, and so on and so forth. So my issue here with Tucker is this idea to separate the Old and the New Testament. Christians believe in the Old Testament. There are things like the different civil laws, and it was like ceremonial laws or whatever, that we're not like bound to anymore, sure, but you got to read both. And it's built upon the Old Testament. Jesus came to fulfill the law. If you read John, Jesus makes it very clear when he's, going at it with the Pharisees and stuff, that he's like, you guys are so focused on the law and all this stuff, all these scriptures, all this Old Testament stuff. They wouldn't have called it, but all these, everything is pointing to me, bruh. Everything, like I am the conclusion. Like you're missing the most important part. Okay. So if you just show up to the party and say, oh, Jesus, but you don't look at everything else that leads up to it, you've missed a lot of things. You've missed a lot of things. People talk about like John, like obviously will say that Jesus has got more than like other things in the other gospels, but that's not the case. Like other gospels also show from that Jesus is also God, but you're gonna miss a lot of things if you don't read the Old Testament. So Tucker saying that our values in Western civilization, or the US or whatever, are based on the New Testament, it just ignores a lot of things that are in the Old Testament. For example, this idea that we're all made in the image of God, that's why we all have this important human dignity that's attached to us. That's obviously something that's in Genesis. And that's, first book of the Bible, right? So there's that idea. we also have like Blackstone's theory, and that is the idea that if we let I'd rather let like 10 guilty people go free than have one innocent person suffer. So that idea is kind of, evolved in this idea of like, if you go to the court system, we would rather allow that possibility that maybe someone is guilty to go, because we have such a high bar to clear, because we don't want to accidentally punish someone who shouldn't be punished. So you have to prove that someone is guilty beyond any reasonable doubt. So that idea spawns off from Abraham, debating with God about, Sodom and Gomorrah. Let me pull that up. I can read that real quick. So, there's a lot of ideas in our culture that are taken from the Old Testament that Tucker is just kind of ignoring here, that I don't like. It's like, it's obviously on a historical level just untrue that our civilization was built on the New Testament rather than a foundation of both, but really the old, And I also don't like it because people, I don't know, it makes it seem like people have such a problem with the God of the Old Testament, as if it's not the same God in the new one. Like, or like, I don't know, Jesus is some new entity that sprang up and wasn't, before Abraham was I am, as if he didn't make all things, as if he wasn't there during all the ugly parts that people have an issue with, like have an issue grappling with the Old Testament. You don't think Jesus was there, or is not the same God that's carrying on all through? So if you have a problem grappling, I guess, with the Old Testament, and a lot of people do find it challenging, you got to find a way to I guess read the Bible with a more charitable view, and not Tucker's view, I think, is a bit childish, and I'll get to why, I suppose. But then the men set out from there, and they looked down towards Sodom, and Abraham went with them to set them on their way. The Lord said, "Shall I hide from Abraham what I'm about to do, seeing that Abraham shall surely become a great and mighty nation, and all the nations of the earth shall be blessed in him?" And that's something to consider too. All the nations of the earth shall be blessed, you know, in him, through obviously the lineage that would eventually become Jesus Christ. For I have chosen him that he may command his children, his household after him, to keep the way of the Lord by doing righteousness and justice, so that the Lord may bring to Abraham what he has promised him. Then the Lord said, because the outcry against Sodom and Gomorrah is great, and their sin is very grave, will go down to see whether they have done altogether according to the outcry that has come to me, and if not, I will know. So the men returned from there and went toward Sodom, but Abraham still stood before the Lord. Then Abraham drew near and said, will you indeed sweep away the righteous with the wicked? Suppose there are 50 righteous within the city. Will you then sweep away the place and not spare it for the 50 righteous who are in it? Far be it from you to do such a thing, to put the righteous to death with the wicked, so that the righteous fare as the wicked. Far be that from you. Shall not the judge of all the earth do what is just? And the Lord said, if I find at Sodom 50 righteous in the city, I will spare the whole place for their sake. Abraham answered and said, behold, I have undertaken to speak to the Lord, I who am but dust and ashes. Suppose 5 of the 50 righteous are lacking. Will you destroy the whole city for the lack of 5? And he said, I will not destroy it if I find 45 there. Again, he spoke to him and said, suppose 40 are found there. He answered, for the sake of 40, I will not do it. Then he said, oh, let not the Lord be angry, and I will speak. Suppose 30 are found there. He answered, I will not do it if I find 30 there. He said, behold, I have undertaken to speak to the Lord. Suppose 20 are found there. He answered, for the sake of 20, I will not destroy it. Then he said, oh, let not the Lord be angry, I will speak again, but this one, suppose 10 are found there. He answered, for the sake of 10, I will not destroy it. And the Lord went his way. when he had finished speaking to Abraham, and Abraham returned to his place. And of course, God took it out. So they did not find that number. Oh, so Blackstone's theory is inspired like by the story. And I already mentioned that we're all created in God's image. That's you can find that in Genesis 1:26 through 27. It also in Genesis 9 talks about how we're made in the image of God. Therefore, if you take a life, then your life is then forfeit. Then, so you have capital punishment right there affirmed in the very first book of the Bible. That's pre, the law, and it's also affirmed throughout the Old Testament, and then also in the New, I would argue as well. The idea that we need multiple witnesses, that's something that's affirmed in Deuteronomy, chapter 19:15. So if there's a crime, you need different witnesses. A single witness shall not suffice against a person for any crime or for any wrong in the connection with any offense that he has committed. Only on the evidence of 2 witnesses or 3 witnesses shall a charge be established. Like when there was like the witch trials and stuff going on, because people are like, oh, these Christians, they burned all these witches and stuff like that. The Christians actually rose up and said, no, this is evil. This is evil. People are not getting like proper justice here. Like there's no real witnesses, and they just knew from a biblical standpoint that how these people were being condemned was not right, and they had to come together and repent. So there's a lot of people who will say that they're doing things righteously, but you can always just go back to the word and see if people are following the word correctly. So and then it goes on and says, if a malicious witness arises to accuse a person of wrongdoing, then both parties to the dispute shall appear before the Lord, before the priest and the judges who are in office in those days. The judges shall inquire diligently, and if the witness is a false witness and has accused his brother falsely, then you shall do to him as he had meant to do to his brother. So you shall purge the evil from your midst, and the rest shall hear and fear, and shall never again commit any such evil among you. Your eye shall not pity. It shall be life for life, eye for eye, tooth for tooth, and hand for hand, foot for foot. You are not supposed to bear false witness. And guess what? That also made it in the 10 Commandments, which is also in the in the Old Testament. Yes, it's repeated in the New Testament, but it's also in the Old one. So again, the idea that Western civilization is based on the New Testament, not the Old Testament, is just not true. And then he talks about how, Tucker's like, oh, it's wrong to do collective punishment. Oh, it's so wrong. Ah. Okay, but it's the Old Testament that talks about how children are not responsible for the sins of their fathers. You can find that in Deuteronomy. You can also find that in Ezekiel 18 and 20. So that's a theme that's also in the Bible too. And I mentioned this a lot of times. I love that the Bible teaches everyone is accountable for their own sin. It doesn't matter what the power dynamics are. It doesn't matter if you're the oppressed or the oppressor, etc., etc. Everyone is accountable for their own sins. And they're like in Exodus, when you had the Passover and they had to put the lamb's blood on the door. The reason why they had to put the lamb's blood on the door is because they had sinned. And that acted as like their sins being like passed over and forgiven. Again, everything points back to Jesus, right? But because he's the Passover lamb. But they also had sinned. And the Bible talks about the sin that they committed, that they started serving other gods. Now they were the oppressed in that situation. They were serving under the Egyptians. Like, of course they would. Well, I guess it doesn't have to be, of course they would, but people started serving other gods other than the only one. And they were guilty of that. It wasn't God like going like, okay, well, I understand. It's like, no, you did a bad thing. I'm going to do you a solid and give you a way to be forgiven. But FYI, you did this thing. You're responsible for that. I love the Bible. I love the God of it, who's the same in the Old Testament and the New Testament. So I mean, we're supposed to do justice and love mercy. That's in Micah. That's Old Testament. Like so these ideas from Tucker, um that is just based on the New Testament. The Liberty Bell quotes, Leviticus 25:10. Um and the idea of that, of loving your neighbor, that's found in Leviticus. So a lot of things that are repeated in the New Testament, they're in the Old Testament. These people that he says that he looks up to, they're aware of the scriptures in the Old Testament. So you can't you can't just get away from all this stuff. So you have to study both. I don't understand why you wouldn't love both. I can understand that Tucker's having a hard time with it, but we can go ahead and keep watching.
And that you can be saved by Jesus. That is Christianity in 3 sentences. And so that is reflected, even for people who aren't Christians, that is reflected in an ethical framework and a legal code that is the only truly unusual and great thing about the West, which is we do not punish the innocent. We only punish the guilty. We do not, you commit a crime, we don't throw your kids in jail. We don't execute your cousins. We don't commit genocide against your whole tribe. We punish you because you did it. We treat each person as an individual. That is Western civilization.
I want people to keep in mind that Tucker is like, we only punish individual, blah, blah, blah. Because he said something during the Ted Cruz interview, which some people are saying he removed it from the original podcast or something. I'm not sure if that's true because I didn't go look at it. That's what some people are saying. But I still have the clip, so I'm going to play it. When he suggested that we nuke some people for something silly. Well, not necessarily silly, but his reasoning on why we should be nuking was silly to try to get one up on Ted Cruz. But I just wanted you to keep that in mind because I will play it.
Christian understanding does not derive from any other religion. Christianity alone, unique, makes that claim. And that's the basis of our justice system, which, again, even non-Christians appreciate. That's why they move here, because it's self-evidently more humane. That's where the idea of human rights come from. They're not collective rights. It's not that your tribe has rights and his tribe doesn't. And it's you as an individual rights. And that idea is not only being challenged in our country, it's being disregarded. It's disregarded in DEI. It's disregarded in affirmative action. Identity politics is a refutation of that idea. We are awarding some people something because of how they were born and hurting others for the same reason. That is anti-Western, it's evil, and it leads, in the end, inexorably to genocide. That is
okay. So he's obviously trying to disregard the Old Testament and the role that it's played in building Western civilization because he wants to just solely say it's a Christian thing so he can exclude Jewish people. So he has to kind of just separate the Old and the New Testament. It's just not true that what he's saying, like historically, it's just not true. It's just not true. You're ignoring a lot of scriptures and a lot of teaching on justice. Like a lot of times when the Israelites were rebuked, it's because they weren't doing justice. God extremely cared about that in the Old Testament. Extremely cared about that. But he's got a little setup here.
The root idea behind what happened in Europe in the 40s under the Nazis. It's the root idea behind what happened in Rwanda in 1994. It's the root idea, just saying, behind what's happening in Gaza right now, where it's like, we're going to kill the kids too. We don't care. And we're going to, by the way, move everyone out because they're a people that is fundamentally opposed to us. Yeah, well, I'm not for that. Sorry, because that's not the Western understanding of justice. We punish the guilty alone. We do not punish the innocent.
So, yeah, so he had to go all this route to say like, and this is why they can kill the kids and they don't care. This is an evil accusation, and it's just not true. It's just not true. I don't know if Tucker's gone over there to Israel since all this has started. As you all know, or many of you know, I just came from Israel. And it seemed like a really wacky claim that he was making prior to me going to Israel anyway. But after going there, it's just really apparent how much they really, 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 really don't want to kill civilians. And I was talking, when I was up in the Golan Heights, we were on this Jeep ride, and they were, kind of just explaining, how things were up there and the dangers that they face, from Hezbollah and so on, and rocket fire. And I got to go through like a barracks that was active like last year, and they're talking about different people who had been killed from like rocket fire. And it was interesting. I mean, a lot of people talk so much about what's going on, on the southern border and stuff, but they're not talking about, or thinking that much about what's going on like in the north and stuff. So the person who was driving us around in the Jeep as we were going, through the Golan Heights, he said, I can forgive them for killing our children. I can't forgive them for making us kill their children because they hide behind them. And I thought that was a pretty striking statement. Everyone knows, or everyone ought to know, that they don't want to kill civilians. It's the whole point of hiding behind the civilians. That's the whole point, because people don't want to kill civilians. It makes warfare very difficult when you're building terror tunnels under the city, an advanced terror network under the cities, under buildings, under hospitals, when you have civilians keeping the hostages, when you're hiding different weapons, having weapon caches at schools and mosques and so on. It makes it very difficult to liberate people, to rescue the people they kidnapped. It makes it very difficult to win a war. Yet Israel took a lot of steps to try to minimize civilian deaths. They would do the roof knocks. They would do text calls, drop leaflets, even though that stuff also alerts Hamas to their presence as well. These people do not want to just kill children, to kill civilians. That's not what they want. Now, they understand that they have to save their people, that they have to stop Hamas, but they truly do value life. And these accusations from Tucker, and then also like people like Dave Smith, it's really disgusting. And I think he's bearing false witness. I think he's lying. For what purpose? I don't know all his motivations. I just know I agree with Ben that I don't think that Tucker's really on our side anymore. And I think a lot of Christians are very gullible, unfortunately, where a lot of people will claim to be a Christian and they'll say a couple things here or there because they want to play identity politics, so they want a special group. So Tucker, Candace and stuff like, oh, we're Christian, and then they'll say things to make the Christians the victims, and a lot of Christians are victimized. But like Tucker talked about nuclear weapons, and he's like, every time I have a conversation about nuclear weapons at dinner parties, nobody can tell me exactly the time where they were created. That's because it's demonic. What? and then he's like, they killed Christians in Nagasaki. They killed Christians here. And Candace played that game too. And also while saying things, Candace said, it was a mistake that we got involved in World War II. And, Tucker makes it seem like it was not a great thing that we got involved in World War II. And, he had a guy on who said that the chief villain in World War II was Churchill. So it just kind of seems like there's this undermining of the West a lot. And then he'll go on to defend people like Zoran Mamdani. He's like, he's not a jihadist. Like, what are people talking about? Is he a communist? I don't. And he'll write things like that in his newsletter. And then he'll mock people for being concerned about Sharia law. He's like, but they have a rape rate of 0. It's like, do you think these women can properly report that, Tucker? Are you what? In the past, he's had a lot to say about Sharia law when he was on Fox, but he's changed his tune for whatever reason. I don't trust people who are trying to like sever this tie of Judeo-Christian values while at the same time trying to like downplay the threat of Islamic fundamentalism. I really don't trust people like that. People like Tucker, people like Candace. It just gives off all the red flags, but it's just not true that they don't care about killing the children when it comes to the war or just civilians in general. It's just not true. It's just not true.
Period. And that's not racism. And in fact, it's the answer to racism. It's the answer to anti-Semitism. It's why anti-Semitism is wrong. It's why racism is wrong. No, you're not better than me. No, you're not worse than me because of how you were born. You're the same as me because we were both created by God. Period.
Yeah, that's made in the image of God. That is Genesis. Again, first book of the Bible, Old Testament. That idea goes back all the way to the Old Testament. These values that he's espousing, he's ignoring the fact that they're in the Old Testament because he wants to separate Jews and Christians.
Thinking of people as members of tribes, any tribe, including my tribe, is prima facie immoral. And yet it is the operating idea behind so much politics. And I reject it. I reject it when it manifests as anti-Semitism. I reject it when it manifests as anti-white racism, which has been predominant. I know that's real, but I'm mad about that just because my kids are white, which they are. I'm mad about that because the idea is immoral. It's anti-Christian. That's the destruction of the West. I see these people like, we're defending Western. Levin's like, we're defending Western civilization. Randy Fine, who's like, yeah, we just have to kill every Palestinian because they're Palestinian so we can defend Western civilization. I'm like, no. You're the enemy of Western civilization because collective punishment is the enemy of Western civilization. Period.
Wow.
Okay, so as far as what he's saying here about wrong to like, oh, bomb this person or whatever, it's wrong. I gotta play this clip from Tucker talking to Ted Cruz because it seemed pretty extreme.
On the cusp of a war. So if there's evidence that Iran paid hitmen to kill Donald Trump and is currently doing that, where's that? Like, what are you even talking? I've never heard that before.
Okay.
Where's the evidence? Who are these people? Why haven't they been arrested? Why are we not at war with Iran?
That's a great question to ask.
How do you know that that's true?
We know that it's true because we have been told that by the military and our intelligence community for the last 2 years.
We meaning who?
Congress has and the public. I mean, we had multiple testimonies. I can send you testimony.
Do we know the names of the people or where this happened or what they tried to do to kill Trump?
We do not. We have not apprehended an Iranian hitman trying to kill him. We know that Iran is trying to do so.
In the United States?
Yes. And by the way, like Iran...
I find it hard to believe that... I mean, this interview came out a bit ago, but I find it hard to believe that Tucker was unaware of those sorts of reports going out, or that his staff or someone wasn't aware. And it just kind of seems like he's playing dumb to really antagonize and make this an unnecessarily difficult interview with Ted Cruz, an adversarial interview with Ted Cruz. Like, do we know like all these specifics? Blah, 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 to try to debunk it, and how he tries to debunk it just becomes really absurd, and you'll see.
Seems like a huge headline, and you're acting like everyone knows this. I didn't know that.
Iran put out a whole video about murdering Trump.
Right, but I've never heard evidence that there are hitmen in the United States. I mean, trying to kill Trump right now. We should like have a nationwide dragnet on this, and we should attack Iran immediately if that's true. Don't you think?
No.
If they're trying to assassinate our president?
They have been for 2 years.
Then why aren't we at war with them?
Well, we are trying to...
Why don't we just nuke Tehran if they're trying to murder our president? There's nothing that you could do that would be worse for the United States than murdering Trump. And I just don't understand why you're not calling for the use of nuclear weapons against the Ayatollah right now. I'm serious. If you really believe they're trying to murder...
The use of nuclear weapons...
Whatever
that's part of the problem of...
So what do you mean? You don't seem to take the allegations seriously. I do. If you believe they're trying to murder Trump, we need to stop what we're doing and punish them.
Okay. So he tried to debunk the idea that Iran was trying to kill Trump. I didn't hear about it. If that were true, why wouldn't we be getting ready to nuke Iran? I don't know. It just seems like that's a big step that leads to a lot of repercussions. And obviously that would kill a lot of people. And I thought Tucker was really against that. I thought Tucker was really against collective punishment. But he's saying if the government was planning to kill our president, then I guess everybody got to get nuked. Tehran. Even though nuclear weapons are demonic. There's no consistency here, and they say such crazy things across their different interviews and platforms that I don't know. Maybe they don't expect people to take the time to connect it, or maybe they just don't care because they're just going to say something new and crazy the next time around, and then when they get called on it a lot, they're just gonna pretend. I don't know. Like they didn't know what they said was wrong, or like that everybody else took it the wrong way. So I don't take Tucker very seriously, but I guess serious enough that we have to talk about him. But but when I say I guess I don't take him seriously, I don't think he's sincere. But he has obviously a large platform and it impacts a lot of people. So I guess it's worth talking about and debunking some of the stuff that he says. So I got more. Oh, I got the clip of him saying that the nuclear weapons are demonic. So let me just go ahead and play that.
Nuclear technology in the first place, which are not human forces, obviously. And let me just ask you this, which I've asked a million people at dinner parties, but never in public. What was the moment we can point to that nuclear technology was invented? We can point to Isaac Newton and say, what apple fell on his head? Or we can point to Albert Hoffman in his lab messing around with the, ergot bacteria. That's when LSD was made. I've never met a person who can isolate the moment where nuclear technology became known to man. And so where did it come from exactly? Oh, German scientists in the 30s. Really when? Name the date. And I've never heard anybody do that. It's very clear to me that these are demonic. I mean, these are evil.
Okay, so there's an answer for that, and I know people in this video left comments that were just like Google or Grok searches and whatever. But he and also Candace, have you noticed that they'll try to debunk stuff, not with like cold hard facts, but just like pretending like it's like the whole thing is ridiculous. Like we just saw the whole Iran trying to kill Trump thing, and he just tried to act like it was ridiculous as opposed to, really dealing with what Ted Cruz was trying to present to Tucker. He's like, well, I can send you this stuff. He's like, but it doesn't make sense because we should be bombing them if this was a true thing that's happening. If you're going to say that, oh, we don't know the exact date that it happened in Germany. Well, like, what was the exact date that it came into people's minds to be able to do nuclear weapons? And I no one can answer that question. Therefore, it's demonic. Okay, if it was demonic and it was demonically implanted in someone's head, wouldn't there be a date for that too? Like it doesn't make any sense. Tucker Carlson to me talks and just someone who's trying to appeal to religious people without having much respect for them. Especially like his story about being attacked by demons. Like, I woke up with scratches on my back. You sleep with your hunting dogs. You don't even hypothesize that maybe the scratches are from the dogs. You and your wife are go straight to demons. You, Mr. Journalist, didn't take photos of the demonic scratches and like post. I haven't seen that evidence. If he has posted it somewhere, and if you were demonically attacked, how do we know the demons aren't still with you, Tucker? How do we know that? But let's finish.
Their only purpose is to destroy the innocent, to murder the innocent. They've only been used once, and I think there's an interesting ethical debate about their use. Was Truman right or whatever? But if you take 3 steps back, you could say, well, wait a second. If you end up killing, incinerating tens of thousands of civilians, that's just a bad thing. Let's just be honest. That's just a bad thing. And anyone who does that is going to pay consequences. It's just true. And by the way, the fact the second bomb was dropped on the Christian population of Japan, which was majority in Nagasaki. In fact, it was sighted in on a church in Nagasaki. Was that an accident? Why Nagasaki exactly? And by the way, why has every subsequent American war resulted in disproportionately the deaths of Christians? That would include Vietnam, by the way, where the Catholic population was decimated, up to and including Iraq and Syria, now in Russia. Why is it that our use of force consistently since the end of the Second World War has been against Christians? That's been the effect, to kill Christians. The bombing of the Balkans in the 90s under NATO. Why is that? And I just don't think it's an act.
Yeah, he doesn't. He's going in on this victim mentality. No, it's funny. I saw a TikTok the other day with a historian talking about why it ended up being Nagasaki. Let's see if I can find that. But it wasn't the first choice. It just kind of evolved into found it. And there are other reasons that didn't even make it in this video. But since we're here talking about the subject, let me just go ahead and play this video. Since Tucker thinks it's just demons and people just trying to take out the Christians, that's not really how that went about, but conspiracies. So and I'm not saying it's not working and appealing to some Christians, but I just think it's a game that he and I think Candace are playing.
Decisions made along the way. Why did the United States bomb Hiroshima and Nagasaki instead of some military headquarters or other places where civilians weren't? There were a lot of processes and meetings and decisions made along the way about what this bomb was, how it should work, what it would be used against. At the beginning of making the bomb, like say 1943, the attitude was, we'll probably use this against some sort of military installation. The first target they even discussed was basically the Japanese equivalent of Pearl Harbor. It's called Truck. And sure, there would be some civilians there, but it's not dropping it in the middle of a city. By 1945, 2 years later, one, Truck is not an issue militarily anymore. They had cut it off. It was not a target. And two, the United States had gotten in the habit of targeting cities. In the early part of 1945, the United States began firebombing Japanese cities with napalm. They burnt Tokyo. They burnt Osaka. They ended up burning 67 Japanese cities by dropping basically flaming gasoline on them. The other issue is that the bomb they ended up with was one that would work best if you detonated it pretty high in the air. If you detonate it high in the air, you spread the blast damage out wider, but your blast damage is also less intense. So if your target is some built up bunker, you're not going to destroy it by blowing up the bomb in the air. If your target is a house, you don't need as much blast pressure to destroy it. So they had a bomb that they ended up with through technical decisions along the way that would be most impressive if you used it on a city. And they had many discussions about what kind of target, what's the goal of this weapon. The goal of the weapon was essentially psychological. They wanted to cause the Japanese people to say, we cannot tolerate this, we cannot win, let's surrender. One of the people involved in the discussion said that the goal was to have the Japanese basically capitulate to the power of the universe. Oh, you don't want to surrender to the United States or the Soviet Union? Well, what if we use the power of the sun to destroy you? To me, the really interesting thing is that Hiroshima was not their first choice at all for a target. The first choice that the military had was Kyoto, former capital of Japan. It was taken off the list by the Secretary of War, Henry Stimson, because he thought that the city was too civilian in nature, was a cultural heritage site. Hiroshima got then bumped up to first place because it had some military bases and manufacturing in it. It had not yet been bombed. Its geography was such that it was sort of like a bowl-shaped city surrounded by hills, and that meant it would kind of intensify the effect of the weapon. So from the point of view of the United States military and the scientists who consulted from them, it was a perfectly good target. Nagasaki was only added to the target list after Kyoto was taken off of it because they wanted a backup target. The actual target for the second bombing run was a different city, Kokura. Kokura had a major arsenal in the center of it that produced weapons for the Japanese and was surrounded by workers' houses. So by their criteria, this was a great target. When they got to Kokura, though, they found that it was covered by smoke or clouds or haze. It's not clear exactly what, but they could not see it to exactly target the bomb on it. So they went to the backup target, which was Nagasaki, which was nearby.
So there you go. Did they do it to kill Christian? No. But why does Tucker want, and Candace, I heard Candace say that first. Why do they want Christians to believe that? Because they are they say they don't want to do identity politics, but that's what they're doing. They're like trying to appeal to Christians and make them feel like they're the perpetual victims and so on. And that's why Candace like, they're trying to hide our history. They don't want to talk about the Christians were killed in Nagasaki. Why is that? There is real Christian persecution going on around the world. Like people were talking about Nigeria, which by the way, Tucker had some people on that downplayed that, who had some really nefarious sort of ties and perhaps some reasons to try to downplay what's going on in Nigeria. So I don't trust these folks. They're you know, the way that they analyze the Bible is just inaccurate. They're telling a lot of lies, slandering a lot of good people. For what nefarious purpose? I cannot all the way say. But they got some bad stuff going on. I also want to play Tucker his comment about Christian Zionists. And this one is pretty wild to me too.
How do you, and there are a lot like that. John Bolton. I mean, I've known them all. George W. Bush, like the Karl Rove. I mean, all people I know personally who I have seen like be seized by this brain virus, and they're not Jewish. And most of them are self-described. And then the Christian Zionists who are, well, Christian Zionists. Like, what is that?
Right.
And I can just say for myself, I dislike them more than anybody, because like, what? Because it's Christian heresy and I'm offended by that as a Christian. That's why. So I don't like, why not? Like, I'm pissed at the neocons, very pissed. I've said that a million times. I've been mad since December of 2003 when I went to Iraq.
Okay. So, talking to Nick Fuentes, he says a Christian Zionist, he dislikes them more than anyone else. Nick Fuentes has said repeatedly how much he likes Hitler. Repeatedly. Tim Pool, by the way, was having a debate with Joel Berry? And he's like, well, how many times has he actually, said that he loved Hitler? And I'm like, does he not know that it's been more than once? I mean, one is bad, but it's been a couple times. I don't have time for a compilation video, but they're out there. And he tried to say that Joel Berry just dislikes, doesn't care about his like overall message, and is just has an opinion based off of some clips that they've seen from Nick, and then try to compare it to, well, Trump, very fine people, which is insane. Nick has said that Hitler was right. He didn't do anything wrong. Denies aspects about the Holocaust. Also has said some very disgusting things about women, wanting to the women wanted to be beaten and raped, and has said some things about pedophilia. There's been some people around him who have been caught with young men. He said that Unite the Right rally was like an incredible night. That's when they had those tiki torches. They will not replace us, that Biden kept citing, to attack Trump and stuff. He's not a good guy. He thinks we're going to have a utopia if women would shut up and we incarcerated the black people. So there's a lot of things that are really problematic about Nick. And here comes Tucker Carlson, having him on after Charlie Kirk has passed away. Charlie Kirk has been trying to keep Nick away from Turning Point, his ilk away from Turning Point. And Tucker, who's supposed to be his friend, who Charlie Kirk was willing to lose millions of dollars over to platform Tucker and keep him coming to Turning Point USA, immediately platforms this terrible kid who's like his enemy. And then says to him, I dislike Christian Zionists more than anyone, knowing that that's what Charlie Kirk was. It's crazy. So he did apologize. But his apology is even worse, in my opinion.
But I just want to say at the outset, because this has been weighing on me, I did say something that I really regret saying that I didn't fully mean. I said it because I was mad, which is I don't really mean. When I was telling this, I was simpy and I didn't. I said something of, I despise Christian Zionists. And I'm just sorry that I said that.
I didn't get the vibe that he was really that angry when he said that. And I don't think that's a good excuse either. A lot of people will say things while they're angry and they will use that as an excuse to say the thing, but that doesn't mean that they don't mean what they say. That doesn't mean that they don't mean it. Now, I don't know if Tucker, I would assume that Tucker doesn't actually mean it. He's just saying it for nefarious reasons. But does he really hate them more than anyone else? To me, that would obviously be a ridiculous and hyperbolic statement anyway. But I think he intentionally says those things. I don't think it was actually said in rage that he was that angry about it when he said what he said, but he did say it intentionally to Nick, while Nick Fuentes was there talking to him.
Because I'm mad at a certain kind of thinking. Some of the nicest people I know is actually, if you're in a save you, if you need someone to watch your bank account, they wouldn't steal from you. They're like really good people and sweet people. I want to be very specific quickly about what I was talking about. Government bombed churches in Gaza and killed a bunch of Christians. And not an accident, of course. And this is like a very high-tech military with precision. I mean, they, gave pagers with bombs in them to Hezbollah. So like this is a military, a national defense institution that understands what it's doing. They didn't accidentally bomb 2 churches and kill these Christians, and they never apologized for it.
So that's a lie. They did apologize for it. You can look it up, but Bibi and them, they did apologize for it. So Tucker's flat out lying about them not apologizing for it. And then he doesn't have proof for his statement like, oh, they did it on purpose. He's speculating that they did it on purpose because in his mind he's just rationalizing like, oh, like they did that beeper thing with Hezbollah. Like they're so technologically advanced. You think that they're just bombing Christians on accident? Well, a lot of terrible things can happen in warfare, especially urban warfare, where your enemy is hiding among civilians. Like, yes, I do buy that it's an accident and they did apologize for it. You cannot forgive them or whatever. And by the way, when I was in Israel talking to people on the ground, you know what they said? It did happen. We apologize. There's no excuse. They just said there's no excuse for it. No excuse. It's a bad thing that happened. We can all acknowledge, we can all talk about it. But the idea that they're just doing all this on purpose, which they believe that to kill the kids, they don't care. They think that they think that they're murdering these people on purpose. And then they don't care. It's not true. It's not true. So here's Tucker explaining like, oh, the Christian Zionists, they're actually really nice people. But I was upset because, Israel is murdering Christians on purpose. And by the way, I asked about this particular interview when I was writing in the Golan Heights. And they said like, did it happen? It's no excuse for that. It's terrible. But as far as what they're able to pull off with Hezbollah, they've been dealing with Hezbollah for a minute. And as far as the threats that they were seeing with Israel, regarding to Israel, that was kind of more of a top priority. And so they were just kind of more ready for them to pull that sort of thing off. So just because they did this really incredible, move against them with the beeper thing, which I think both of these gentlemen had voiced some issues with, doesn't mean that they can't accidentally do stuff in the midst of warfare. It doesn't, the reasoning doesn't make any sense. It's so stupid. It's so stupid. But again, it's just not true. They do not want to kill civilians. If you go there and you talk to people, including like I talked to people in the IDF, spokespeople for the IDF, a colonel in the IDF, like there's soldiers everywhere. They're still like babies, just little babies. They're like so young. Go because everyone has to serve. You graduate high school, you go in the IDF. So they do not want to kill civilians. They want to protect their people. They wanted to get them home. They understand that there's a danger all around them, and you do have to prioritize your people. But do they want to kill civilians? No. And it's really disgusting to me, especially looking these people in the eye, having those conversations. Tucker Dave and all these people just being like, no, they want to murder the kids. They want to murder the Christian. It's just not true. It's just not true.
And so I brought this up with a couple of Christian leaders, including the Speaker of the House, and said, like, what is, how could, we're paying to bomb churches? Because we're paying for it. And the response I got from every single one was, the Bible commands us to support Israel. And I said, so Jesus is telling us that we need to get on board with murdering Christians? Is that what you're saying? And they basically were just like, shut up. And I found that extremely, as a Christian, extremely upsetting. And I've never kind of gotten over that. But I should have said that. That's what I was talking about specifically. We cannot support the murder of innocents. I don't care what the pretext is. That is not allowed in our religion. And if it is, then it's not my religion. That's not what the New Testament says at all. It's not even a close approximation of what it says. There's no justification for that in the New Testament, period. So I am distressed. I don't hate. I shouldn't have said despise, but I'm very distressed about that. And that's specifically what I was talking about. So I just want to apologize.
Yeah.
Okay, apology not accepted. That still sounds nuts. Do you really believe that Tucker Carlson had a conversation with Mike Johnson or Ted Cruz or other people, and he said, "Hey, Israel is bombing churches. That's messed up. I don't want to pay to bomb churches." And the response was, "We have to support them because the Bible says so. Shut up." Do you really think that was the response, or is he being uncharitable and hyperbolic to try to, I don't know, cover his butt? Because the way that he then goes on to, he can try to apologize, but the way he's framing Christian Zionists is more uncharitable. Like, I just want people to understand that the reason why I was so upset and actually said that, I dislike them more than everyone else is because they don't actually care about Jews, Israel, just bombing Christians on purpose. And they justify that we have to just support them bombing Christians on purpose because the Bible says so. That's not an apology. That's just more accusations. That's just more accusations. So Tucker is a horrific liar. And again, this is someone who keeps trying to pull away at that Judeo-Christian value ethic, like, oh, our values are based on the New Testament, not the Old Testament. And at the same time, they'll try to pretend like Islamic fundamentalism isn't a threat. I just find it very strange. And Zoran Mandani is not really a communist. And communist dictators aren't really so bad because they're socially conservative, or there's all these issues right now with people like Tucker. And I used to wonder, like, people who would, like, I guess, like Dave Smith and other folks who would have such an issue. I guess I believe in, like, just warfare theory. I think of, obviously, that Israel was fighting a just war. And that's one reason, like, I don't like love talking about foreign policy or whatever. I just thought it was fascinating because to me, it seemed on a moral level that it was obvious that Israel was doing the right thing, trying to get their people back, trying to end Hamas, who will take any kind of opening, and is saying, yeah, we will commit another October 7th as soon as we got the opportunity. And it's like, okay, well, we got to take these people out, and we also obviously want our people back. And they did a lot of things to try to minimize civilian casualties and so on, even though it's very difficult given the setup of Gaza and the terror tunnels and just the tactics that they resort to. So to me, I'm like, okay, clearly these guys are in the right, and I want them to be successful. They also killed Americans. They kidnapped Americans. We didn't get our last American hostage back until May. And I don't think that that Hamas should be rewarded, that they should win, and that people should be able to see that this kind of tactic is successful. People need to understand that sort of brutality will be punished, So I thought it was clear that Israel was just morally in the right, but people who are just like ignoring all that, I don't know, the nuance and the finer details, be like, it's just wrong to kill people. It's just murder. Okay, well, there's a difference between, murder and killing and warfare and self-defense. And, if you, I don't know, people are like, the Bible says thou shalt not kill. It's actually thou shalt not murder. But, I know some translations said kill, but it's actually murder, and murder is an unjustified killing. And, I think, Israel has a good case to make why, again, it's just warfare. But if they just look at it so simplistic, I would just wonder to myself, I'm like, how do people cope with just reading the Old Testament? How can they handle stories about, the different warfare that the Israelites engaged in, or I don't know, the firstborn of Egypt or the flood? Like, how can people cope with stories like that? And I guess the answer is they don't. They don't. Tucker goes, Western civilization is based on the New Testament. The New Testament believes in justice and doesn't have collective punishment and all this stuff. And it's like it to me, it's just like they cut off everything that happened before Matthew. But you can't do that. You can't do that. You're missing a lot of first of all, interesting stories, a lot of fundamental meanings and messages. But again, everything is pointing toward Jesus. And you got to go through the Old Testament to get to that picture that you have an imperfect people that God is using, that he raises up, that he also punishes when they disobey, when they're not doing justice. The if you read the Old Testament, Jews will say, like, that God made it because it doesn't make Jews look good. No, it doesn't, because you'll read the Old Testament like, they sinned again, so but you have the law, but people are never going to be good enough to live up to that. So you do need a savior, because if you want to be reconciled to the Father and be in heaven and stuff, it does require perfection, but we cannot meet that standard. So Jesus meets that standard, and he paid the debt of our sin that we are guilty of. And if we accept him into our hearts and we trust in him, we can be reconciled once again. But you don't get that full story unless you start at Genesis and then you go ahead and you end at Revelation. So someone said, I love the New Testament fulfills the Old Testament. Yeah, exactly. You can't just ignore, and Jesus made it very clear, like, you guys are you tell the Pharisees, like, you guys are so obsessed with the law that you're not getting, like, everything is pointing toward me. Everything is pointing toward me. So and even also, like, in the Old Testament, I know people like grapple with certain things, but like whether you go read it yourself or you can go watch like Frank Turk videos or other apologists tackle these sorts of things, but God has reasons why he does the things that he does. With the flood, it says that that they were like, their thoughts were evil continuously. you know um it was pretty bad. So Sodom and Gomorrah, like, they were ready to rape angels, like crazy stuff. Like, some people just go to like they weren't hospitable. Yeah, because they were about to rape angels. It was terrible. So and everybody gets their just desserts. Again, it's not like a pro Israel book, a Hebrew book or whatever. They mess up, they turn away from God. God, punishes them. So you got to read the whole book. You got to learn to love the whole book. Please try to look at the book more charitably. There's a book, Is God a Moral Monster? That's really good. I think I might have recommended it to Tucker, actually, because when he came for an event for our pack, actually, shortly after he left Fox, and he had said that he had just kind of started reading the Bible, and I got to talk to him, and we took a picture, and I was like, oh, that's cool, he's starting to read the Bible. But I know that if you start to read the Bible and you're in the Old Testament, there are some challenging passages for people. So I do recommend Is God a Moral Monster to people to try to get a better grasp of the Old Testament, to get over, I know, some questions that people might have, or even like atheist objections and so on. So I might have recommended the book to Tucker. I know I recommended it to somebody that day. Our conversation was short. But yeah, you can't just shrug your shoulders and pretend like the Old Testament's not there, or like it's that vastly different. Like it's just Jesus is a fulfillment of all those things, and it's all pointing toward him. So yeah, so that's my little rant about Tucker Carlson. I could go on more, but let's leave that. Let's leave it at that. Please go blacktnews.com, check out different content on my website, articles, videos, etc. If you like what I do here, please consider leaving a donation on the site, because it just costs a stream, run my site, all that good stuff. So guys can support it, very much appreciate it, and appreciate you guys. You guys can also check out different merch that's available on the website as well. Like we got the cool goat hoodie and goat t-shirt that's available. I do have it in different colors, so you guys can check out all kinds of cool stuff that we have available on the website. And like the pro-choice men are sus, love that one. um we also have different books you guys can get. It's Christmas coming up, so people might want to get some books for their kiddos. This is a middle grade chapter book, super kid. I got stuff for some older readers as well, and of course I got bigger that you guys can get in paperback and hardcover. So I recommend you guys pick that up. All right, thank you guys for joining me today. I will see you guys tomorrow afternoon at like 4 p.m. Eastern time. And then on Thursday, I'm gonna, I'll let people enjoy their holiday weekend and stuff. But you guys will have some videos available for me to watch, because I am in the process of editing my Israel blogs. So I won't be live on Thanksgiving, but there will be videos posted. So if you want to watch something while the turkey's in the oven, that'll be a thing. So anyway, God bless you guys, and I will see you tomorrow.